بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة المتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا ومعوانا ومرجانا قرة أعيننا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد طب القلوب ودوائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها وعافية الأبدان وشفائها وعلى آله وصحبه يا نور. We're looking at this, we're continuing with this topic of looking at how we can establish this calling within our lives, how we can become people who can call others to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can establish the truth and the majestic nature of this religion within our lives, within our personal lives, within our family context, within our neighborhoods, our communities and our societies. So yesterday we spoke about the importance of responding to the call. And the first thing we do is we respond to the call. What do you mean by respond to the call? We respond to the desire to call others. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to call other people to Islam. So we therefore respond to that call. And respond to that. And then it says, once you've done that, this is the point we were at. فَنَعْلَمُ أَنَّهُ لَا يَقُومُ أَمْرُهَا إِلَّا بِالصِّفَاتِ يَجِبُ أَن نَتَخَلَّى عَنْهَا وَنَنْخَلِعَ مِنْهَا ونتصفى فننقلع جذورها منا وصفات يجب أن نتحلى بها. Yeah, that this is very important. And he's combining, he's bringing between the points of da'wah and spirituality. Because da'wah is ultimately a spiritual journey. So is everything else in life. So is knowledge. Gaining knowledge is a spiritual journey. We don't gain knowledge for the sake of information. We don't gain knowledge just for the sake of absorbing outer stuff that's around us. It's all part of a spiritual journey, a desire to purify the soul, and a desire to become elevated and to become more refined human beings. This is why we're doing it. I was only sent, as the Prophet ﷺ says in the famous hadith, Tabarani and Muwatta and others, he says that I was only sent, the only reason I was sent was to refine and complete noble character. This is what we were talking about in the evening classes as well. The classes we started on the Prophet ﷺ is we're looking at the character of the Prophet ﷺ and how we can understand, implement, and adopt those character traits, which is really, it's the great universal calling of Islam, and it's also the universal appeal of Islam. What is the appeal of Islam? The appeal of Islam is that it allows you to become free from the chains of these dark chains that pull us down. It allows us to become free of that, free of these negative habits and negative character traits, and to rather become enlightened and ennobled people. لَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Indeed, we have ennobled Bani Adam, the human being. Yeah. So this is like he talks about the لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ التَّقْوِيمِ, that we created human being upon the best of forms. This is the best of outer and inner forms. The form that is greater than the angelic realm itself, that the human being can rise far and above the angels, far and above these angelic beings of light, that the human being can rise above that. So this is what we're being called to, and this is what da'wah, and also one thing is that's what for ourselves. Secondly, to call others. To call others, then this also necessitates these character traits to be established within our lives. So this is what he says, that we begin by removing takhalla, yeah, takhalli and tahalli. This is the process. Takhalli is to remove problematic things, to remove foul character traits, to remove bad habits and sort of negative behavioral traits. And then tahalla is to adorn, yeah, to add beauty to our lives, yeah, to adorn ourselves with the beautiful character traits. This is the process that we do, and it begins, of course, with takhalli, and then tahalli begins with removal, and then with adorning these traits. And this is the establishment of character, which is the basis of the religion itself. So how then do we do this? The first thing we have to understand is that in order to do this, it requires what we call aql. Aql is like translated as the intellect. It's deeper than the intellect, really. But it has this idea that in all the basis of all character, as we're going to explore tonight, the basis of all character is aql, is the intellect itself. The intellect, what does aql mean? Aql is, as I say, it comes from a root word iqal. Iqal is like the hobbling cord that you put on a camel. So in other words, you want to tie your camel and you have your camel there and you tie it such that if the camel tries to escape, it can move a little bit, but then it gets stopped. Yeah, it can't go beyond like a particular circle, a particular circumference. It's contained within that. And this is what the aql is. The aql prevents you from going outside of the boundaries. Yeah, so there's boundaries, there's limits that are limits of nur, limits of light that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to enhance us and to give us an opportunity to achieve our potential, an opportunity to become spiritually elevated. And the aql allows us to establish that. This is why it's important that really this is what the journey is. We shouldn't fool ourselves and trick ourselves. Like many of us now, I mean, speaking personally, I've seen many people who are like hafaz al-Quran, for example, or they know the hadith, or they've mastered Islamic law, or they know all these knowledges, but their personal lives are a mess. Yeah, they're engaged in illicit relationships, or they're just obsessed with the world around them. Yeah, or they're engaging in haram by looking at things they shouldn't be looking on the internet, whatever it might be, addictions of different nature. Yeah, that or they might feel that, oh, I was deprived as a child or as a teenager because I had to do these things. So now they're trying to be free and remove themselves from that by committing whatever they're committing. Yeah, or they just find it difficult to cope with life because they've lived in a certain environment, they haven't been spiritually strengthened, they now find it difficult to deal with the temptations of life, and they're therefore falling into that. So all of these things, what I'm saying is that we shouldn't be tricked by that. That really the aql is not about knowing a lot of information. The aql is that which stops us, prevents us from going beyond boundaries. And this is really what the world needs now. We need people, we need uqala, we need intellectuals. But not intellectuals like we're going to tell you about philosophy, but intellectuals that can stop themselves, that can stop others. Yeah, they can stop themselves and they can stop others from what? From harming their own selves, from going beyond limits that have been placed. So this is the essence, this is the beginning of it, is that we have an aql, which is the basis of all khuluq. And then secondly, we say, how is good character obtained? Is attained through struggle. Through struggle and slow, steady improvement, incremental improvement. Yes, slowly but surely. Like they mentioned that you cannot learn except through ta'allum. Yeah, they said that nobody learns knowledge except through ta'allum, and nobody gains good character except through tahallum. What does that mean? It means that no one gains knowledge except through struggling, ta'allum, slowly. Ta'allum has this meaning of struggle, and slowly but surely getting better and better. That's how we gain knowledge. That's how we learn. It's a tough process. Yeah, it's a process that's hard on the nafs. But in the same way, we do not gain good character except through tahallum, except through steady, slow improvement. Yeah, we force ourselves to become better and better and better, and we slowly improve. So, I mean, a great example of this is what we spoke about yesterday, the aspect of ikhlas and riyah. So, for example, we have within us a negative character trait, something that we need to remove, which is like ostentation, showing off, displaying our deeds before people. That's our disease. And then we want to replace it with something good, which is sincerity. So the takhalli, the removal process, is removing ostentation. The tahalli, the adornment, the adding, the beautiful process, is to add ikhlas to it. Yeah, this is what we're trying to do. As an example, we do this through struggle. It's incremental. It's not like you're suddenly going to become this mukhlis or this mukhlas, yeah, or this sahib al-sidq. This can happen, And it did happen with the companions, many who were blessed with the touch of the Prophet ﷺ, that he would transform them instantly. But this is not the norm. The laws of spirituality, the laws of the universe, the spiritual laws of the universe dictate that this happens slowly. It doesn't happen immediately in one go. So if you look at the issue of riyah, like we mentioned yesterday, we remove it through slowly increasing our dhikr, constantly making dua, Surah Al-Ikhlas, constantly being aware of our thoughts, like what, why am I doing this? What's my motivation? What's my intention behind this? And it's a struggle. Slowly but surely you try to overcome that. Little by little you do it until eventually it's removed from your heart, and then you can replace it with sincerity. Then you can replace it with absolute desire for God alone. Like your qasd, your focus, and your wijha, your turning in every moment is for Allah alone. Like our teacher Sheikh Ibrahim, he said that if you want to understand spiritual elevation, how can I check? This is what he says, how can you see that you are getting better spiritually? He says, you can see that when you become detached from your deeds. In other words, your deeds are no longer important. You just focus on your intention. Your intention becomes important. And it's almost as if you're looking at yourself act. It's almost as if you're seeing yourself acting because your whole mind and everything is just on your intention. Your focus is just on why you're doing it, and your focus is on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you can just see the action there. It's as if someone else is doing the action and you just focus on the intention. This is a sign of spiritual refinement. And this takes struggle. So tahallum, it takes slowly but surely. And we apply that same principle. There's a beautiful book that's actually been translated into English as well, which is on disciplining the soul. One of the books on the Ihya al-Ulumuddin, I believe it's book 21 of the Ihya. It's been translated, it's like the red book, as they call it. It's been translated by Dr. Timothy Winter, Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad. There's two books, Disciplining the Soul and Breaking the Three Desires, within that compilation. The first one, Disciplining the Soul, is a remarkable book. And one of the key principles in that book is what we're talking about now, that to improve, it takes slow but steady struggle to overturn our habits. So they talk about one of the early people who he had a servant who he kept with him, and this servant was very rude. He was very harsh. Even in public, he would be very rude, shouting and screaming, argumentative, insulting he's insulting his master. He's insulting the guy who's in charge of him. He's showing rudeness about. So one of them, they said to this man, they said, why do you keep this guy? Why have you got this servant? You don't have to have him. Just get rid of him, get someone else if you need a servant. Why do you have this servant when all he ever does is insult you, humiliate you in public, shout at you, scream at you? And he said, listen, this man is the secret to spiritual success. He says, he's helping me to tame myself, to control myself when I'm angry, to not pay attention to other people's taunts and curses, to rise above the desire for answering back, for vengeance, for becoming angry. So this man has become a tool, a means by which I can attain a higher level. This was the understanding. And that takes struggle for you to not get angry when people are insulting you, etc. It takes struggle. It also takes the intellect to recognize and realize, when you reflect upon these things, you realize it's the better thing to do. This is why they say, for example, mercy. Where does mercy come from? Mercy comes from wisdom, because it takes an intelligent person. You have to be intelligent to understand that mercy is a better way. It's better to be merciful, because firstly, you're going to benefit. This principle of if you do good, then good is done unto you, number one. Number two, you benefit in the next life. So you benefit now in the world and in the next life. Number three, it's intelligent to let things go. This is intelligence, is to be merciful and to be forgiving and to just let things go. Otherwise, it's only going to harm you. It's only going to consume you. You recognize, for example, it's intelligent to not be envious and jealous of others, because it's just going to consume you. It's intelligent to not show off, to not display your deeds. Why? Because you're losing everything. You've worked hard to worship Allah. You've worked hard to do good actions. You're losing all of that reward. It becomes haba'an manthura, dust scattered in the wind just because of that. Yeah, it's intelligent to not be arrogant, because arrogance is something ugly. If you see someone being arrogant, you don't like it. So why would you want to reflect that? Why would you want to reflect something ugly? It takes intelligence to not be stingy with your wealth. Why? Because if you are stingy with wealth, number one, you're not benefiting. The benefit of wealth is to spend it. Even in this world, you want to enjoy yourself, then spend the wealth. Don't keep hold of it and build it up. It's not going to get you anywhere. And then secondly, if you are holding on to your wealth, that wealth is controlling you. Yeah, so the money or the possessions or whatever it might be, that ends up controlling you. Instead, you should be controlling your wealth. Yeah, that's why they say disposable income. It's disposable. You can get rid of it. It's disposable income. That's not income you hold on to. It's disposable. So this is the point, that we should be in control. This is what we mean by liberation. You are free from, which allows you to be free to. Yeah, that if you want to be free to do as you choose, you have to be free from everything. Otherwise, you're just a slave. And that's the reality. We're just slaves to our own desires. And we have to pretend this illusion of freedom. But really, why are we acting? We're acting because of impulses. We're acting because of desires. We're acting because of wants. We're not acting by our intellect. This is why Imam al-Ghazali gives this example of a city. He says, imagine you have a city and the king of that city is in charge. Yeah, you have the king is in charge. And then that city, it has a police force. Yeah, and then it also has like the rebels. Yeah, these people who are rebels who are just trying to run riot and destroy everything. So he says it's got the king on top, it's got a police force, and it's got the rebels. Yeah, this is what's going on in the city. So he says the king of that city, that's your intellect, that's your mind, that's who should be in charge. Yeah, your intellect is in charge. The police force is your anger. This force that stops you, that stops evil in the world. Yeah, if it's in control, if you control your anger, then it means you use your anger to stand up for the truth. Yeah, and then he says these rebels, that's your desires, that's your hawa, your nafs, your desire for whatever it might be, whether it might be food or drink or these kind of things, or whether it might be for proving your point, yeah, for imposing your ideas on the world, for your arrogance, for your pride, for your envy, all these things, yeah. So this is the balance of the city. Now he says, what happens if imagine these rebels, they overthrow the king, they take the king out of the equation, and they become the kings, the rulers of that city. What's the result? Chaos, anarchy. And that's what happened. That's what's happened to us as human beings. We've chucked away the intellect and we've allowed the rebels, we've allowed our desires to decide how we behave, to decide what we do, where we shop, what we buy, what we consume, what we spend our time doing. All of that is now decided by these rebels, not by the intellect. Yeah, this is a coup d'etat is the call, isn't it? Yeah, it's a coup. This king has been removed. So what does Imam al-Ghazali say? How do we stop that from happening? How do we stop that from happening? How do we keep our intellect in charge instead of allowing these crazy rebels to take over? How do we do it? So he says one thing. He says the key to success here is the police force. Whoever controls the police force controls the city. So if the police force is being controlled, is on the side of the intellect, then mashallah, of the king. If the police force is on the side of the rebels, your passions, then you're in trouble. In other words, we have to use our anger for good. We have to be able to control it. So if the intellect is controlling our anger, then we only get angry for other people. We never become angry for ourselves. We never demand our rights. me. That goes out of the equation. Rather, we get angry when we see the religion being attacked, when we see other people being oppressed and harmed and hurt. That's when we get angry. Never for our own selves. Yeah. So you can see the contrast. Yeah, you can see the contrast right there. That's how. So once we control our anger and become courageous people, then we're able to remove desire and use the intellect to move forward. This is the essence of character. This is how we do it, and it's a slow process, and it does take time, and we have to constantly be vigilant and constantly be trying to improve. Yeah, and as time goes on, we'll go from one place to another, and we'll get to a stage where, mashallah, we're able to. Like we said, everything, there's two extremes. Yeah, there's two extremes, and good character is in between that. That's the beautiful tahalli that we need, is in between that. So, for example, we have extremely angry on one side, and then we have cowardice on the other side. Someone's very, very angry, recklessly angry, or he's a coward. The in-between is courage. Or we have somebody who's very, very tricky. They use their intellect to be very, very tricky and to trick, fraud, duping people, deception. Then we have someone else on the other side who's just foolish, yeah, naive, stupid, a simpleton, as they call them, yeah. And then in between is wisdom. That's the middle one, yeah. Or we have somebody who's excessive in their desire, yeah. They're a glutton. They can't control their food intake. They're always eating, for example, or whatever it might be, due to whatever reason it might be. Or you've got people on the other side, yeah, who are starving themselves, yeah, like the phenomena like anorexia, bulimia, these kind of things, yeah. And then the middle way is temperance, yeah, to have a balance within that, yeah. Or we can see the same thing, for example, with sleep. You have people that are sleeping too much, which is just a laziness, 10, 12 hours of sleep a day. And then you have people on the, and oftentimes, to be fair, it's not to criticize those people, it's normally related to depression. One of the signs of depression, people cope with it in different ways. Some people, they can't sleep. Other people, they just want to sleep their life away because they can't deal with the pain of being awake. Yeah, so you have that. Then the other extreme is like insomnia. Yeah, people who can't sleep due to anxiety, fear. Yeah, the middle way is temperance. Yeah, so this is the essence of it. And the Da'i, the caller to God, needs to understand that for two reasons. Firstly, so he can attain balance himself, or she can attain balance within his or her own life, number one. Number two, so they can heal others. So they can bring other people into balance. If they don't understand what balance is, if they don't understand what good character is, how can they become that? And how can they bring other people into that? Yeah, so it's very, very important that we have this tahalli and this tahalli, which is really the foundation, like we said, of spirituality. So he says, he says that we do this, so we have this, and then we establish this within our souls. Then he says, يترتب عليه بعد ذلك قيام كل عامل منا في أي مجال من مجالات العمل في هذه الدعوة في البلد وفي خارجها قيامها بالأمر على وجه الصفاء. Yeah. So then he says, we then establish this upon the characteristic of safa. Safa is internal purity. And internal purity is like the defining characteristic of a Muslim. It should be our defining characteristic, that we become eternally pure. And eternal purity is this, is to remove filth and to replace it with beauty within our hearts. Yes, and then he says, ala wajhil naqa, which is similar. Ala wajhil naqa being purity as well. Ala wajhil tuqa, yeah, that we do it from the perspective of taqwa, that we want to become people of taqwa, which of course we know this is the foundation of the religion. Now look at taqwa. Taqwa as an example. Taqwa is a struggle. How do we attain taqwa of the tongue, for example? We struggle to make sure that we don't lie or backbite or argue or speak ill of others or break promises, whatever it might be. We struggle with that. How do we attain purity of the eye? We struggle to not look upon things we shouldn't see, to not gaze upon people with ihtiqad, looking down on them, judging them, that we don't look upon the world with this exaltation. We struggle. We might be working and then suddenly we see something and we look down upon, and then we back onto it like that. It's a constant struggle to do that. And that's the foundation. And there's levels to that struggle. So what we should be trying to do is raise ourselves. So maybe our struggle today is with major problems, major sins. But then our struggle tomorrow becomes with minor sins. Then our struggle the day after becomes with things that are allowed but they're disliked. Then our struggle becomes things which are permissible, but we don't want too much of them. Then our struggle becomes with our thoughts, so that we're always remembering Allah. Can you see this is the progress that should be made? Yeah, yeah, that we should seek to do things to perfection. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed, He's commanded excellence in everything. Every single thing has excellence, but itqan. Yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He loves. Allah loves that when a slave does something, He perfects it. He does it with itqan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that, but this is divine love. This is wilayah. How do we attain the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? By perfecting things. Yeah, by perfecting things. So He's talking here about yeah, that we seek to perfect. We seek mastery, which, like we've said, mastery is the commitment to continual improvement. That we are committed to getting better and better and better at whatever we do. Yeah, we do this, and then he says, and from the point of view of completely dedicating ourselves, yeah, complete dedication and expending our energies in this regard. Because if we desire purity, if we desire good character, if we desire takhalli, to remove bad, and tahalli, to adorn ourselves with good, if that's what we desire, it requires tremendous effort. It requires like an annihilation of the self. It really does, which is not an easy thing to do. Yeah, and it requires that we expend energy, time, effort in this. Yeah, but through doing that, we then able to achieve this type of success. Okay, so it says that this is quickly on the next. He's talking about the next section, which is a very important section in the book. Muhimmatu da'i fil hayat. What is the concern of the caller to God in his life? In other words, what should be our life concern? What should concern us in our lives? This is the question he's looking at. And if we can understand this question, we can understand prioritization. What's important, what isn't important. We're free of needing a life coach. Yeah, this is life coaching right here. He's telling you how you should be guiding and how you should be living your life. Yeah. مهمة الداعي في الحياة. So he says, وَقَدْ رَضِيتُ عَنْهُ وَنَفَعْنَا بِهِ مَنْ صَدَّقَ بِرِسَالَةٍ خَدَمَهَا. Yeah? The one who believes, one who has certainty in this message, he serves it. Yeah, he will spend his life serving the religion if he has certainty in it. Yeah, sadaqah. This is the power of tasdeeq. The power of certainty is what it translates into action. That our belief, the belief that we have in our mind and our hearts, that moves into the realm of action. That we implement it, it manifests on our limbs. That we speak, see, hear, talk, walk. Yeah, use our hands, whatever it is that we use, all of that in service. Yeah, so the one who believes in this message wholeheartedly, he serves it. وَمَنْ صَدَّقَ بِرِسَالَةٍ تَحَمَّلَ مِنْ أَجْلِهَا. And the one who believes wholeheartedly in this message, he will undergo difficulty. He will bear difficulties for it. He will bear hardships in order to deliver it. وَمَنْ صَدَّقَ بِرِسَالَةٍ بَذَلَ مَالَهَا وَنَفْسَهُ مِنْ أَجْلِهَا. Yeah, the one who believes in this message, he will spend from his money. Yeah, and he will give from his energy, from himself for this. And this is important. Once we have firmness of belief, once we have certainty, then it's easy. Really, it's easy to give it all up. It's easy to expend and to spend for the sake of Allah and to give for the sake of Allah. Once we have certainty, once we recognize the blessings and the barakah that comes with expending and with spending, inshallah, and with giving. Inshallah, we'll stop there. We'll continue this section tomorrow. If there's any questions, inshallah, please do ask. You can ask through the chat, or you can ask orally as well, inshallah, about anything that we've covered there, inshallah. there's any questions. Okay, inshallah, we'll stop there. وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين.